This is today's cyber news for October 10th, 2025. You can also subscribe to the newsletter and view the archive of previous headlines at dailycyber.news. What happened? SonicWall confirmed that threat actors accessed backups for all customers using its cloud firewall backup service, not just a small subset. Those backups can include device configurations, network objects, rules, and sometimes credentials or tokens that enable lateral movement. The company says it revoked exposed tokens, rotated keys, and is notifying affected customers with remediation steps. There's no sign that on-prem firewall firmware was Trojanized, but configuration intel alone can fuel precise follow-on attacks. Investigations and forced resets are ongoing. What this means: configuration data is a blueprint for your network and a shortcut to privilege escalation. Organizations using the cloud backup should assume attackers know policy gaps, exposed services, and trust relationships. For leaders, treat this as a material third-party incident, prioritize visibility on edge appliances, and brief stakeholders on residual risk windows. For defenders, rotate all device credentials, regenerate API tokens, and compare current configs to golden baselines for unauthorized changes. Watch for unusual admin logins to firewalls and sudden rule edits that enable inbound access. Recommendation: immediately rotate credentials and tokens tied to SonicWall devices, regenerate backups, and implement strict change monitoring on firewall policies. What happened? A critical authentication bypass in the Service Finder theme and plugin for WordPress allows attackers to log in as any user, including admins. Exploitation has been observed at scale since late summer, with automated campaigns creating new admin accounts and dropping web shells. The flaw, tracked as CVE 2025-5947, is trivial to weaponize against unpatched sites. Providers have issued patches and takedown guidance, but many sites remain exposed due to slow update cycles. What this means: compromise paths include complete site takeover, SEO poisoning, and malware distribution to visitors. Hosts and agencies managing many WordPress installs face outsized risk from one vulnerable dependency. For leaders, expect brand, legal, and revenue impact if your marketing or customer portals get hijacked. Push for SLAs on plugin inventory and patch windows. For defenders, inventory where the plugin or theme is present, patch or disable, and audit admin users and cron jobs for persistence. Watch for new admin accounts, unexpected plugin uploads, and modified .htaccess files. Recommendation: patch or remove the vulnerable plugin immediately. If you can't, disable it, block write access to WP content, and monitor for rogue admins and file changes. What happened? Researchers tracked an Android spyware family called Clayrat that masquerades as popular apps like WhatsApp and TikTok. Distribution relies on look-alike websites, Telegram channels, and side-loaded APK files seeded through social media. The malware requests broad permissions, exfiltrates messages and media, and can persist across reboots while updating modules from command servers. More than 600 samples and dozens of droppers indicate an ongoing, adaptable campaign focused on Russian-speaking users but portable to other regions. What this means: consumer and bring-your-own-device phones are at risk, and any corporate chat data synced to those devices is in scope. Enterprises with relaxed sideloading policies or unmanaged Android fleets face exposure through shadow communications apps. For leaders, revisit BYOD allowances and require managed app stores for business communications. For defenders, enforce Google Play Protect, disable unknown sources, and use Mobile Threat Defense to flag overprivileged apps and data exfiltration. Watch for devices with sideloading enabled and traffic to newly registered domains hosting APKs. Recommendation: block sideloading for corporate access, require managed store installs, and quarantine devices with risky permissions until reimaged. What happened? A capacity problem in Azure Front Door, Microsoft's global content delivery and application acceleration service, cascaded into Microsoft 365 administration and portal access issues. Impact varied by region, with admins unable to reach management consoles or seeing elevated error rates. Microsoft deployed mitigations to rebalance capacity and restore service while monitoring for recurrences. No data loss is indicated, but service reliability concerns remain. What this means, Front Door is a critical dependency for identity, admin, and user-facing SaaS experiences. Outages at this layer translate into operational blind spots for IT teams and delayed incident response. For leaders, factor cloud edge dependencies into business continuity planning and communications playbooks. For defenders, prepare offline admin paths, cached scripts, and local break glass accounts for continuity when portals fail. Watch for correlated spikes in service health alerts and user tickets reporting timeouts across multiple Microsoft properties. Recommendation: map your dependencies on Azure Front Door, establish out-of-band admin procedures, and test continuity plans for identity and SaaS management. What happened? Microsoft reported campaigns against higher education institutions where attackers phished faculty and staff, took over accounts in HR or payroll systems, and rerouted direct deposits. The actor, tracked as Storm 2657, abused weak multi-factor enforcement and legacy protocols to maintain access. Victims discovered missing pay only after paydays, complicating recovery and incident timelines. The attacks have persisted for months and shift lures to match academic calendars. What this means, SaaS HR platforms and self-service payroll portals are high-value targets with immediate financial impact. Decentralized university IT and federated identity models increase attack surface. For leaders, mandate phishing-resistant MFA for payroll changes and tighten approvals for bank account edits. For defenders, implement conditional access, disable legacy off, and watch for impossible travel logins tied to HR apps. Watch for rapid bank detail changes and unusual access to payroll admin pages. Recommendation: enforce phishing-resistant MFA and step up verification for any payroll or bank account change, with real-time alerts to both HR and the employee. What happened? A fast-moving botnet dubbed RondoDocs is exploiting dozens of already known so-called end-day vulnerabilities in parallel against internet-facing devices. Targets include DVRs, CCTV systems, small business routers, and popular web servers, giving the operator reach from home offices to mid-size enterprises. The campaign rotates exploits aggressively, which makes simple signature blocking ineffective and helps the botnet survive takedowns. Researchers also observed rapid rescanning after reboots or patch attempts, indicating automation and resilient infrastructure. What this means: mass exploitation of known bugs remains the biggest risk for edge gear and neglected servers. Any organization with unmanaged IoT, outdated firmware, or slow patch cycles presents easy entry for DDoS or lateral movement. For leaders, require a quarterly lights-on review of every public IP and consumer-grade device your business relies on. For defenders, prioritize external attack surface management and firmware patching for routers, NVRs, and web middleware before discretionary items. Watch for repeated probes to the same endpoints and sudden outbound connections from cameras or DVRs. Recommendation: eliminate exposed, outdated devices. Patch the rest on a fixed cadence, and geo-rate limit or block management services from the open internet. What happened? Multiple investigations show ransomware affiliates using Velociraptor, an open-source digital forensics and incident response tool, to gain remote visibility, hunt data, and stage payloads. The tool's legitimate capabilities, live collection, artifact queries, and lateral movement helpers, make it attractive for stealthy pre-encryption activity. Adversaries pair it with commodity loaders and living-off-the-land techniques to persist and exfiltrate quietly. This trend blurs the line between blue team utilities and red team tradecraft. What this means: dual-use tools reduce attacker costs and complicate detection because they resemble sanctioned admin activity. Endpoint policies that allow Velociraptor for responders may also allow adversaries to blend in. For leaders, set policy that any remote forensics tooling must be allow-listed per case and disabled by default. For defenders, baseline where Velociraptor or similar tools are permitted, alert on unexpected server components, and verify code signing and hashes. Watch for new Velociraptor services or scheduled tasks and outbound connections to unfamiliar collectors. Recommendation: restrict, sign, and monitor DFR tools. If you don't actively use Velociraptor, block execution organization-wide and alert on installation attempts. What happened? Discord clarified that an earlier extortion claim overstated the scale of a breach tied to support workflows. About 70,000 government ID images used for account verification were exposed via a third-party support system, not millions of full user accounts. Discord invalidated exposed tokens, is notifying affected users, and says core production systems were not compromised. The incident still places sensitive identity documents at risk for reuse and fraud. What this means: even limited exposure of identity documents creates long-tail risk for impersonation and account takeovers. Organizations that rely on Discord for communities or developer support should consider how trust and safety processes intersect with third-party vendors. For leaders, treat verified ID workflows as regulated data and demand vendor controls equivalent to your own standards. For defenders, monitor for reuse of leaked IDs in KYC, Know Your Customer flows, and enforce step-up verification on suspicious logins. Watch for spikes in verification disputes and login attempts from new countries using old devices. Recommendation: require step-up authentication for any account recovery or verification change, and audit third-party support tools holding sensitive documents. What happened? Attackers are luring users with spoofed Microsoft Teams installers delivered through search ads and SEO-poisoned pages. The payload chain ultimately installs a persistent backdoor researchers call Oyster, which harvests credentials, profiles browsers, and enables command execution. The campaign targets both home users and small enterprises that allow self-service software installs. Signed loaders and lookalike domains help the operation bypass casual scrutiny. What this means: software download trust is drifting from vendor stores to search results, and that's exploitable. Any device allowed to install apps without a catalog or packaging control is fair game. For leaders, mandate trusted distribution channels for all business software and bar ad-driven downloads. For defenders, enforce application control, block known lookalike domains, and inspect MSI and DLL signature chains before execution. Watch for PowerShell spawned by installers and new scheduled tasks or run keys after a Teams install. Recommendation: lock software installs to a managed catalog, block ad-driven download domains, and quarantine any host that installed Teams outside your official channel. What happened? Researchers detailed a fresh variant of the click-fix social engineering technique that now abuses cache smuggling to deliver payloads without obvious download prompts. The lure, often framed as a fix for a security warning, drives the browser to cache a malicious file that later executes via a crafted link or user gesture. By splitting delivery and execution, the actors sidestep traditional content filters and many endpoint alerts. The technique has been seen alongside impersonation of well-known security brands. What this means: web security controls that rely on visible downloads or URL reputation can be bypassed when payloads ride through caching layers. Enterprises with lax browser hardening and permissive handler associations are most exposed. For leaders, set a policy for managed browsers with restricted handlers and controlled cache behavior on corporate devices. For defenders, enable browser isolation for untrusted sites and watch for executable launches from cache paths. Watch for unexpected files appearing in browser cache directories and Smart Screen or Defender prompts suppressed by policy. Recommendation: hardened browsers, disable risky protocol handlers, and block execution from browser cache locations while tightening isolation for untrusted browsing. What happened? Microsoft Defender for Endpoint briefly flagged supported SQL Server 2017 and 2019 as end of life, triggering noisy compliance alerts and ticket storms. The issue came from an asset intelligence bug that misread product lifecycle data and pushed the wrong status to dashboards and APIs. Microsoft acknowledged the error, shipped a service-side fix, and said no actual support status changed for those versions. Still, many organizations had automated workflows that opened incidents, escalated to leadership, or triggered remediation playbooks. What this means: when your telemetry is wrong, your priorities follow it. False EOL signals can divert teams from real risks, overwhelm analysts, and damage credibility with business stakeholders. For leaders, treat tooling drift as an operational risk and require KPIs around false positives and data quality in security platforms. For defenders, reconcile Defender asset status with authoritative sources, Microsoft Lifecycle, and your CMDB, and tune rules to suppress known bad signals until resolved. Watch for sudden spikes in unsupported software alerts and mass ticket creation tied to SQL hosts without recent changes. Recommendation: validate asset lifecycle data against an authoritative source before auto-remediation. Temporarily suppress the misfire while manually watching true EOL systems. What happened? A threat actor advertised a 405-megabyte database allegedly containing over 1 million customer and order records from KFC's Venezuela operation. Samples shared in criminal forums appear to include names, contact details, order metadata, and limited payment-related fields, not full card numbers. The seller claims recent extraction, though independent verification remains mixed. Local customers reported credential stuffing attempts shortly after the listing, suggesting some data elements are valid enough for targeted phishing. What this means: regional brands with fragmented IT can become soft targets, and attackers monetize even partial datasets. Retail and food service operators face reputational damage, fraud costs, and compliance scrutiny if customer data is exposed. For leaders, centralize breach response messaging and require consistent security controls across franchise or regional entities. For defenders, force password resets for affected accounts. Enable step-up checks on suspicious orders and seed threat intel alerts for brand-targeted phishing. Watch for login attempts from new countries against known customer emails and spikes in refund or chargeback requests. Recommendation: initiate forced resets on exposed accounts, tighten anti-fraud checks on high-risk orders, and coordinate the unified customer notice with clear phishing guidance. What happened? New analyses of recent SaaS compromises show attackers often skip passwords by abusing OAuth tokens, API keys, and long-lived session cookies. Stolen tokens come from info stealers, build logs, misconfigured repos, or over-permissive integrations, and they're traded in private channels. Because tokens can outlive password resets and MFA, adversaries maintain silent access until scopes are rotated or revoked. Many organizations still lack inventory, rotation policies, or centralized visibility for these credentials. What this means? The control plane for cloud apps is credentials you rarely see and can't easily reset. Companies with many third-party integrations, shadow IT apps, or CI/CD pipelines are especially exposed. For leaders, make token lifecycle management a board-visible objective with owners, SLAs, and audit checkpoints. For defenders, inventory OAuth apps and API keys, restrict consent to admin-approved apps, and implement automated rotation and revocation on anomaly. Watch for token use from new IP ranges, sudden scope expansions, and API calls outside business hours. Recommendation: set a 90-day maximum lifetime for tokens. Enforce admin consent and least privilege scopes, and auto-revoke on device or geo anomalies. That's the Bare Metal Cyber Daily Brief for October 10th, 2025. For more, visit baremetalcyber.com. You can also subscribe to the newsletter and view the archive of previous headlines at dailycyber.news. We're back Monday.